Welcome to the Real Estate Power Play Podcast, your launch pad for skyrocketing success in real estate investing. I'm your host, Gabe Rodarte, alongside Mark Monroe. We're ready to bring you transformative stories, groundbreaking strategies, and the insider secrets of real estate giants. Get ready to accelerate your investment journey and become a true power player in the world of real estate.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Real Estate Power Play. I am this week's host, Mark Monroe, and I'm excited to have a great guest on this week. And it's something that I always, it figures I have somebody calling me right now, so I apologize.
No worries.
Sorry about that. It's always that way. I forgot to hit mute. So anyways, welcome to another episode of Real Estate Power Play. My name is Mark Monroe. I'm excited to have this week's special guest, especially for you guys that listen, that want to get into land development, entitlement, that want to learn a lot more about that. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit? And, we're just talking there a little bit. You had your jacket on a few minutes ago, and we're Salt Lake area.
Yes, we're in Greater Salt Lake City. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat with you today. So my name is Mike Watson. I'm the CEO of Sumaterra Ventures. We're a ground up land developer. We do multifamily, mixed use, and some residential, twin homes, townhomes, and single family residential. We are based in Utah, but we're doing projects currently in 5 states. We're in South Carolina, Indiana, Missouri, Texas, and Utah. We have between land ownership, development, construction, and ownership about 3,000 doors going currently across the United States. Very, very excited to be here today.
Wow. And that's amazing that you guys got. So when did you, back us up a little bit. When did you start your journey?
So I'll tell you what, I was a sophomore at Brigham Young University here in Utah, just in Provo, and I wanted to get into real estate. I started buying condominiums, single family homes, duplexes, fourplexes, and I started getting into development and land entitlement. That's always been a fun thing for me. And at 26 years old, I did my first entitlement project, made about $70,000 in 60 days. At 26 in the mid 1990s, and thought this is the coolest thing I've ever done. And that became kind of my life's mission at that point, become a developer and a builder. I got a general contracting license back then, even though I don't hold one currently. We hire big builders to do the projects that we do now, but I love entitlement. I love taking a raw piece of land and turning it into something very productive and special. I love taking out an old house. Most people see an old house, they want to do carpet and paint. I want to tear out the house and do lots of carpet and paint and 100 doors, 100 units. So I caught the bug early, and I learned on the small developments and land entitlement projects. I was buying a house on a corner and subdividing the backyard off into another lot or a twin home lot. The guys that were doing 100 lots, 200 lots, 300 lots, apartment complexes, they were going through the exact same process that I was going through. It's just I was doing it for 1 or 2 lots, and they were doing it for tens and dozens of acres. So I caught the bug early, gotten excited about that, and started doing that in the early 90s. And it's just been kind of a maturation process since then.
That's amazing. And it's all been right there in your backyard in Utah? That's where you started?
Yeah, so I didn't leave the state of Utah. I did my first deal in 1994. I didn't leave the state of Utah till probably 2006 or 2007, doing projects in other states. And back then, we used to do all kinds of investing, the flips and the fixes and the wholesaling, the assignments, the subject twos, seller financing. We did the pre-foreclosure stuff, courthouse activities. But I loved the multifamily ground up construction. And we had kind of a fortuitous dark period, 8, 9, and 10. We had some real struggles financially. And I had a chance to hit the reset button because we had not set up our financing correctly. And coming out of the crash of the market in that time frame, I said, hey, if I wanted to be good at one thing, I wanted to be amazing at one thing, and be an inch wide and 5 miles deep instead of doing a little bit of everything. What's the most lucrative thing we do? What's the most profitable thing we do? And by far, it's land entitlement and ground up construction for multifamily. So we cut all of those other things out after that, and had been running on that for the last 7, 8, 9 years exclusively in those marketplaces. And we've made some massive changes to our business, and it's been reflected in the success that we've had.
Wow. And what do you think that the biggest change in your business that really took it to that next level was?
So the first one was I came out of the crash and I created 16 changes to my business. I love sharing this stuff. And probably the single biggest one was couple of rules on land. We don't buy land until it's fully entitled, mean, it has the full permissions in place for whatever project we're going to go do, because we buy it for the raw land price, but we're getting it at the entitled value. So there's typically 50 or more percent equity in the project the day we close on it. So that's rule number one. Rule number two is we don't have debt on land. We don't have debt on land. All of our projects are project-specific LLCs that we bring partners into. So we don't have mortgages or debt on any land anywhere in the country until we take a construction loan. So those two nuances right there have saved millions of dollars probably in interest, but also lots of stress and tension while we're getting construction financing and getting projects in place with the builders in the cities.
It's amazing. I like that a lot. So like you said, how many projects you got going on currently right now?
We have 13 right now going in 5 states.
You cut out in that first part.
We have 13 going on right now in 5 states.
Wow. And what are the
About
states that
half
you're
of those
currently
are
in?
in Dallas, in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth marketplace.
Okay. So you got Dallas, and what other states are you in?
So we're in South Carolina. We have an 84-plex going in the Greenville, South Carolina market. We have 3 projects going in Missouri and the Kansas City market. Actually, 2 larger projects. One of them's been kind of combined to another one. And then we have 1 project in Indianapolis right now that we're doing as kind of a consultant for a firm for another partner of ours as a partner in multiple deals. Have 7 projects in Greater Fort Worth totaling 1,500 units and about $350 million in finished value. Even though they're not all finished yet, we just broke ground on a 754 unit north of Dallas. It's 1842 plexes on 27 acres. So Dallas is a big hub for us, and then the rest of it's here in Utah and Salt Lake City and south of Salt Lake and north of Salt Lake.
Wow, that's great. And do you what are your thoughts on like the shortage of housing? Because you hear some people like in the Florida and the Texas market saying, you know what, because the last couple of years everybody's been focusing on our states where they've been building like crazy, but then there's a lot of inventory getting ready to come online. How do you see that in your vision?
Well, in the states that we're in, there's a couple of reasons why I'm in the states that I'm in, but I'm in Dallas and I'm in Utah for a couple of reasons. The first ones are the long-term prognoses. They're hard to find better markets over time than what's happened in Utah with the discovery of the world back in the Olympics 20 years ago, plus all of the growth and all of the Fortune 500 companies coming here. Hard to beat that. We have a massive, massive opportunity for growth here and will for the next 20 plus years in Utah. Dallas-Fort Worth is exploding unlike anything you're seeing across the country. In fact, the project that I just mentioned, we had the groundbreaking ceremony on 5 of the 10 fastest growing cities in America are within 45 minutes of this location. So when you have the tax benefits that you have in Dallas, when you have the no state income tax that you have down there, when you have other benefits, the demand for housing is unbelievable. I just saw in the news, Texas believes they're short 300,000 housing units over the next 5 years. So despite all the inventory coming on board, there's still going to be a dearth of housing.
That's just amazing. I know down here in our area they talked about it, but who knows? I mean, what is it like what they say, like 3 to 4 million sh housing shortage throughout the country, something on those lines. I think they're saying something like that.
Yeah, and there's been an explosion of housing, but what most people don't realize is with the difficulty in financing the last few years, the housing starts, especially in multifamily, has been next to nothing. We're delivering record numbers right now, but these are all projects that started 2, 3 years ago. We're going to still deliver high numbers through the summer of 2025. But after that, we fall off a cliff and there'll be huge, huge demand. I tell everybody that wants to get into multifamily and wants to learn about it, now's the time to get educated. Now's the time to learn about it. Now's the time to start starting projects. Mark, if I start a project today, probably doesn't come online for 2, 2.5 years. So I really have to ask myself, what does 2.5 years look like from now? So lots of demand over time. And yes, there was an explosion of inventory, but that has been corrected by the poor financial issues we've dealt with the last 4 years.
Wow. And I was just talking to another buddy of mine, actually yesterday and today. We're sitting here talking. He's a real estate guy as well. And some of the things that we're looking at and talking about, you know, we're going through this big AI movement, right? And we're in the middle of I don't know what stage, if we're in the beginning stage, second inning, whatever it may be. But my personal opinion and the stuff I've been reading is that the AI is really going to change our whole healthcare, and it's going to extend everybody's life 30, 40 years. So if that's the case, we're going to have there's going to be such a shortage of real estate housing with people living longer. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Yeah, everything I'm reading, like if you're living an extra 5 or 10 years, if you're going to be alive for the next 5 or 10 years, they're saying that you'll probably be able to hit 100 to 120. So that's going to be another whole big demand that we're going to end up seeing coming up the pipeline. You know.
Yeah, the 55 and older groups, the assisted living facilities, these are all segments of the market that are going to have huge, huge demand coming online and growing through time.
Nice. Now, I know before we jumped on, you talked about you hold an event, and why don't you talk a little bit about that? But I still want to ask a little bit, just so kind of people listening right now, um, when they're listening, because you have an event coming up, but I still want to talk a little bit more about some of your other projects that you're doing. So let's just kind of do a quick plug on that event that you're coming up in. Would you say January, correct?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, most people that do what I do don't share what they share. If you were listening to this podcast and you said, hey, I'm going to go find where I can get trained on multifamily ground up construction, it doesn't exist. There's no training out there. The guys, the big boys that do what we do, they have no desire to let anybody in, tell anybody, teach the secrets, and it's very, very difficult. The reason that we're a little bit different here is we consider a 2-day training event, one that we have coming up on January 24th and 25th. We consider that a symbiotic relationship in that I will teach you and train you everything that I know that I can stuff into 2 days. It's literally me for 2 straight non-ending days. And the reason we do that is I'm going to empower and teach people how to find land that we can do these projects on and how to submit those land parcels to us. And we're going to teach you how to put capital together to be a capital partner in these projects. We have project specific LLCs in each one of our projects. And someone with a few bucks is not an investor. We say that you're not an investor. This is not an investment. You're a partner. You come in and you learn and you participate. And we have regular project calls and involve people. But the point of the 2-day event, which is January 24th and 25th, it's in downtown Salt Lake City. And we'll be doing an event on showing basically how to use all the techniques that we do to retire in 5 years. How can you retire in 5 years using ground up construction multifamily? The goal is not to retire in 5 years, but the goal is to be able to retire in 5 years and to be working for different purposes, different reasons, and on different schedules. So we have 2 days of intense information from finding the land, understanding city codes and ordinances. How do we take a piece of land and sell it regularly for 70 to 400% more than we bought it for because we entitled it? And then how do we entitle it during our contract time for purchase? Instead of buying the land, taking a year to sell it, we have very often have simultaneous closings on the same day or within a day or two of each other. How do we entitle that? Which projects do we keep? How do we finance the land? You'll love this as a sub-2 seller finance guy. How do we get over 50% of our land sellers to put money in the deals? So instead of us paying them cash, we'll pay them some money and then they'll convert the balance owed to a capital contribution as a partner in the deal so that they can make more money and be a functioning partner of what happens to their land. How do we pick the right GCs? And then how do we get construction financing? Mark, the single hardest thing we do in ground up construction is financing. Getting the banks and lenders to lend on these types of projects, getting them to underwrite, getting them the cash flow, getting the proper group together for architects, engineers, and contractors, subcontractors, all of those guys working together to get the finance loan in place to close. And then what do? Do we sell that asset? Do we keep it? Which ones do we sell? Which ones do we keep? Which ones pay for our long-term portfolio and provide that amazing appreciation and depreciation? And these 2 days are going to be intense on all of those topics. And then how do we pick a property management firm and move forward with success after that? So 2 full days, really could do 3 or 4 days easily on this and not cover it.
That's amazing. And where can I get some more information on that?
Yeah, so I know you're going to be sending out a link, and we'll have some forms that you can send out to these guys, so we can put that on demand, so these guys can take a look at that. It's a very simple process. And to my point, for this 2-day event, we charge $299 for this. This isn't $2,000 or $4,000. One of my things that I joke about, Mark, is I don't think I should pay for the room that I'm speaking in. And we're basically kind of cover that. But again, if I can get guys to bring land and to bring capital, it's a win, and they get to participate in the properties and enjoy some of the profits and the projects. But we can get that out to them. There'll be a link that they can get, and then we can also send an email upon request with an enrollment form to get them signed up.
Yeah. You know, you hit the nail on the head about, capital partners, people bring deals. And I was on a podcast not too long ago, and the question that they asked me is like, what do you think the number one thing that you learn in being in real estate? What do you think the number one thing was? And then I go to them, I said, you know what? And I'm just what you just said there. Your competitor, your competitors where you actually do business with. You don't look at them as competitors. They're more business partners. That's why I love real estate so much, because there's so much meat on the bone where there's enough to go around for everybody. And you don't have to be greedy. And that's what I like about it compared to other businesses. They're like, oh no, I don't want to tell anybody my secrets because I don't want them to know my secret sauce. But here, your competitors are your business partners and you end up making money together.
Yeah, and that's the truth. And I've seen this. I've been doing this a long enough period of time. Two right-hand men that I've had working for me that have been the operations directors in our offices before the age of 30. They've run my company, run operations in my company, and both of them have left to start rival development companies like we have at Sumatera Ventures here. And both of them we love like sons, and we cheered for them on the way out. 2 years, 3 years ago when the market was humming, we had 26 projects, twice with the projects that we're handling right now. And when you look at that nationally, there's thousands of apartment complexes going in. So I don't look at it like competition. I look at it like, hey, those guys are going to run across a project that is my expertise. They can't finance it, and they'll send it to me. And I'll get to help them with financing. I get to help them with capital. They'll put me in consulting deals, which all of those things happen for us on a regular basis. So it's a win-win when I educate more people on how to be an expert in this business field.
Why do you think it's so hard where lenders don't want to give capital? What's the big hiccup? Why do they freak out so much?
Well, there's two nuances there. There's a dance that you do when you do multifamily construction. The first one is the numbers have to match with the appraisal, and that's not necessarily the hardest part. So when you get a construction loan, you're basically getting a percentage of the cost. Back pre-crash, before the crash in 2008, 9, and 10, they'd do an appraisal on what the future value of the asset is, and they'd lend based on that number. Well, now they don't do that. They lend on cost. So if they'll look at, for example, we got 5 term sheets this last week on a project in Fort Worth, Texas. It's 9 30-plexes on 11 acres, 268 units. We're using 2 of the units for a property management spot and an amenity space. But these guys, man, some of these guys are back lending to 80, 85% of loan to cost. So you take the cost, how much is the cost? And I'll give you 80% of that. Now, some guys still want to do 75, 70, 65, but you're going to pay more points and more interest the higher you go in the loan to cost. Then that loan to cost has to work in concert with the finished value. But the trick at the end is once you're built and you're leased out, does the 80 or 85% loan to cost work with a 75% loan to value? But the bigger one is the DSCR. Behind that, the debt service ratio. Do they still have a 1.25 or more to debt service? So that debt service is the sweeper. It's the cleaner at the end of the financing and underwriting that makes sure that the loan you can get up front is viable after you occupy and stabilize when the asset's completed.
Do you see that happen? Some issues quite a bit with other developers. Do you keep seeing that happening?
Well, yes. We see projects all the time that don't get financed. And as big of the problem, that's one of the things we spend the 2 days on in our discussion in this training, is how do you underwrite a project so that it gets financed? And the big issue these guys have is they overstate rents, or they build something that's too expensive based on what it's going to rent for, or their units are far too spacious than they should be, which you'll find an inverse relationship. And the larger the units are, the less they rent per square foot, which is a problem. So smaller units are rewarded with a higher rent per square foot generally. The other thing is they don't get all the units. They don't get all the density that they're allowed by zone. They can't lay out a project well. So a place that can have 250 units, they might get 185. And that's not going to pencil based on the cost of the land. So the zoning and the number of potential units dictates cost of value of the land more than than what someone can actually get, right? So there's all these things that come into play. But yes, we see projects regularly. And because I do training and teach people how to find these assets and send them into us, we regularly get sent assets and projects that couldn't get financed. And there's a ton of them out there. So it's a constant problem.
Got it. So how long does it take? You said it takes roughly about 2 years to go through the whole entire process on an average.
Well, it depends which city you're in. For example, Fort Worth is 2 years alone just on Fort Worth, Texas is 2 years just on entitlements alone, which is an aberration. There's cities where we can get fully entitled in 4 months. But the way we do things is Sumatera finds a piece of property in-house, we put it in our contract, we entitle it, we close on it. That's starting day number one. When we close on that, we bring partners in at that point, so our partners are 100% sure of what they're getting and what they're putting capital in and what they're going to be a partner with. From that point, it's generally a 16 to 36-month build, dependent on the size, and more than size is the number of buildings. For example, this 754 unit asset we just broke ground on in North Texas, we're doing the first 542 plexes. It'll be 210 units in phase one, but that one will probably take us 7 years because we'll have a bunch of phases, 5 or 6 phases of around 150 to 200 units each phase.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I like that. So, is there a question that I have not asked that I should have asked in this whole REM?
You know, the questions that I love are the ones, and you've asked some great questions, but the questions I get asked a lot are, what are the single hardest thing about multifamily ground up construction? And I kind of give the answer, but not the correct one. The first one is to believe that you can do it. Listen, I started this, I did my first one at 26, and granted, it was a little 3-lot subdivision. Wasn't a big project like this, but the process for entitlement is the same no matter what the size of the project is. It's typically the same process in each city. So what's the hardest thing? The first one is to believe that you can do it and then to get started in it. And that's why we love our program, where people can bring and be in a partnership with us and ride shotgun through an entire project with some skin in the game, or because they found the land. The second hardest thing is, what's the hardest thing about it? And it's past believing, it's financing. The financing is difficult. What's the third hardest thing? These general contractors, man, you got to watch them so closely. Oh, these guys are unbelievably talented in misdirection and not finishing on time and running over budget. And it's a constant war with those guys. And there's some good ones out there, don't believe me. But that's a crucial part of it, is getting the right people on your team. And again, one of the things we do differently that you and I alluded to offline was we incent subcontractors and contractors to be partners with us in the deal. So we're now saying to the general contractor, if you don't want to be a partner, if you don't want to have skin in the game, you're not going to build this project. If you want to be an owner, whether it's a small percentage or not, then we'll consider you for being a partner and for being the general contractor that builds the project. We also have subcontractors now. That project of 754 units north of Dallas, we have probably between the GC and subs, eight the GC and subs that have put skin in the game and are partners and owners in the project that they're working on.
Wow. And when you say skin in the game, is it based off of like in besides putting capital into it, do they actually are just doing reduction on whatever their budget is that they're normally billing? What's that look like?
You're a sub or a GC, and we even do this with suppliers, architects, engineers, the subs and the GCs. We say to them, look, if I'm the plumber and phase one, I have $1 million plumbing bid, I can contribute 200,000 of that to the contract, and I get paid 800,000 for $1 million worth of work. And we have subcontractors that regularly do that because the return on the $200,000 in ownership in the asset is worth far more to them than the extra $200,000 which they'll spend and will be gone anyways. So there's two ways they can do that. They can put cash in. Some subs say, I don't want to mix my contract with my business. Let me put some cash in. Others say, you know what, I want to be a partner as the sub and I'm going to reduce my contract this amount. But we're very, very scrutinous on how they do that. If it's a contract contribution, so it's a real contract contribution, I'll get 5 plumber bids. And then we'll say to the best 2 bids, here's the number that you need to be at, and which one of you wants to be a partner. And if you want to be a partner, then you'll be considered for a partnership and to be the sub.
I like it. Do you do the same thing with the engineers, or is it mainly the contractors?
No, so the engineers are a little bit more risk adverse. That's why they're engineers. But we've got some architects that have been really strong in this field. We've got an architect that's a project partner in multiple deals, and they're not always deals that he was the architect in, but he has a real heart. We have a great architect out of Carrollton, Texas, which is right by Dallas, and he has been a fantastic partner. But typically, it's funny, the guys that you start with before construction are a lot slower and more hesitant to get in as partners. Your third party guys, your surveyors, your ground guys, your geotechnical guys, engineers, architects, those guys are a risk adverse group. The guys that actually work on the buildings when they're under construction are much more open to this for whatever reason.
Maybe because they actually see it going vertical versus versus the guys just sitting out there seeing a piece of dirt not going anywhere. That's probably psychological.
I think that's a big part of it. And you say to these guys that, look, the hook is easy for them. Look, Mr. Plumber, you're already working on this project. You're just not making a profit on it. So why don't you look behind the curtain? Come see what we do. Come see how beneficial it is and why there's apartments going up everywhere in America. Let's teach you the business. Let's get some skin in the game. Let's get some profits and some tax benefits for you moving forward.
Wow, it's crazy. It's yeah, I mean that's all about the tax benefits. You hit the nail on the head on that one. So it's especially hopefully with this new administration coming in, we should even see some better tax benefits for everybody. You know,
I would imagine. Yeah, the depreciation alone has been unbelievable for the last few years, and we hope that that gets extended past the current expiration deadline. And I
yeah,
think there's a high probability that will happen for the boon of construction that it's done and all the real estate transactions that it's caused with those great benefits.
yeah. When did he put that one in place? 2017? Is that when they put that particular
That
one in
sounds
place?
right. 2017, 18, it was in that area. And,
Yeah.
and I know that that's been an absolute boon along with some of the other things that got put in place. And I hope that that extension gets done so that it continues further into the future.
Yeah, it would definitely for everybody on all of it, not just real estate, but other businesses, but especially for the real estate sector. It's just amazing. So, no, this is great. So tell me, what's the ugly? I mean, I don't see a whole lot ugly, but I guess you can get hurt if you're not doing things and you don't learn things the correct way. Because you do see other developers. I've seen many of them get hurt. I see a development that's been going up the Mandarin Hotel here in Boca. They started before COVID, and I don't know what happened. They ran out of money. They couldn't pay the contractor. I mean, they build on concrete over there because we're in South Florida.
Right.
So I guess that's probably the biggest thing is just over not budging it the correct way, or they get hurt. Is that is that where you kind of
So
see?
yeah, so again, yeah, all the things that we learned in the crash of the market, 8, 9, 10, 11, the massive changes that we made, sweeping changes based on finances then have allowed us to stay in business now because the ugliest of the ugliest happened here. If I underwrite something at a 4 cap, right, in a great market like the Carolinas, and the caps rise to 5.5, 5.75%. That's not quite as devastating if I'm going to keep the asset. But when you combine that with an interest rate that's up 2 or 3 or 4%, depending on when you started and when you're finishing, and then you top that off with a much, much, much slower stabilization, what you're left with is a high interest construction loan that you can't replace with a long-term finance because the lease up is slow. And then when you lease up the slow lease, you've got to refinance into a bridge loan instead of agency debt. So you're going to go from a super high interest rate on construction to a high interest rate on bridge, and then you're going to drop down to agency debt, but only after a couple of years, as opposed to being able to do that literally months and months outside of a certificate of occupancy. So the place where we struggled was we had extra capital in our coffers. We had plenty of time on our construction loans. But when you combine again the higher interest rates, the back end underwriting with how quickly we could underwrite and how much we would get for rents, in most markets, rents have dropped a little bit. The occupancy and what this means is we've had to come out of pocket on a few of our projects to keep those projects going. But we've been able to do that with the other financial planning that we did. But I'll tell you, moving forward, we'll have a much bigger reserve, an interest-bearing reserve that'll bear interest at a low, low amount, but we'll have funds available to us should something like that come up. We should see the reverse now, right? All the projects that we start now, we're going to see multiple drops in interest rate, hopefully over the next year or two. And cap rates and interest rates will be better than we underwrote at, which should make these explosively more profitable. And that's the hope that this next 4 years that we get starting in January will be much more lucrative to our industry based on what we expect to be coming.
Interesting. Great. Well, thank you so much. We're coming to the end of our podcast. We'll be putting out there. We're also talking about possibly doing a webinar, and we'll put something out on that. We don't have a date yet, but if we do one, we will be posting it when this podcast is put out there. Below, you'll see some dates and some links for that as well. We can also put that in the email. And we'll also, if you guys are in the Seller Financing Homes group or any of my social media groups, you'll be able to follow that as well. My website there is Mark, M-A-R-K, the minus sign, Monroe, M-O-N-R-O-E. You'll be able to find some information there as well. But also, how can people reach out to you besides the links and stuff that we'll be putting below? If they wanted to follow you, learn a little bit more about you, what's a good way for them to follow you?
Gosh, it's easy for us to just hop online for our Facebook page. You can follow me individually. I do a lot of posts on our business. I kind of run my personal Facebook page as a business page. We have a Sumatera Ventures Facebook page. We have my personal page on Facebook. Those are great ways, and you can integrate on our website, sumateraventures.com, 2 M's, 2 R's, ventures with an S.com. Very easy to get involved there. Of course, let us know that you're from Mark's group. We have special privileges for Mark's guys. Always let us know where you've come from on that. That would be a big benefit for us. We love working with Mark and have some wonderful things to offer you for that. But easy to do. I'm an avid emailer as well. So my email is simply mike@sumateraventures.com. So love
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually going to head out there myself and sit down, go through it. And anybody that's listening to this right now and you've been following and you want to meet me as well, definitely come on out. We'll post all the information below. And I'm definitely excited. And thanks so much for having you come on to a Real Estate Power Play.
Yeah, I know you've got quite a following, Mark. I've been very impressed with how avid your following is and how much guys want to be around you and learn from you. Been very impressive. We'd love to have you out. It will not disappoint. It's going to be electric. Those 2 days are intense. We've had people from all over the country fly in. This is worth traveling, guys. And we'd love to share with you as much as we can get in 2 days of this intense business opportunity.
I'm excited. All right, guys. If you like what you hear, share, like, and if you want anything that for us to talk a little bit more about topics, just comment out and reach to us. So thank you guys so much to another episode of Real Estate Power Play.
Great to